Hey guys, this is part 2 of how to choose your career path to maximize your income. Now, got a few notes here, some things I missed out in the first part 1. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out before you listen to this one. But anyway, let's just jump into some of the things I missed. So when I was talking about you want to choose a path where some things, they are skills which can then translate from one industry to the next industry and so on. So they're transferable skills. So you don't actually have to start 100% from scratch. So as an example, just to help you start thinking outside of the box, an example that came to mind is an Uber driver. I actually don't mind Uber drivers, like being an Uber driver, because it actually teaches you a lot of skills which are actually very transferable. Right. So the first one is you actually learn accounting pretty well. Right. So like when you go, you get a job. All right. Obviously, you take the customer, and then what do you have? You have your gross revenue. Right. You get paid for the trip. Okay. Then there's all of these costs involved. All right. So it's not like you're just a normal worker. You got to start thinking about all of your costs involved. So you pay Uber a commission. What other costs you got? You got your petrol, obviously. You got your time that you need to calculate. So what is my time actually worth when I'm doing this? You got your tires, all right? Your tires are wearing out. So you got to be thinking about all of this stuff. You got your insurance. That's another cost. And then, you got to be thinking about, all right, if I buy how do I get the car? Is it better to lease the car? Is it better to buy the car? If I buy it, what does that mean? I've got depreciation. So you start thinking in this kind of way of accounting, right? If you buy it as well as like an asset kind of like on your balance sheet. So you think about all of these different things. So that is very relatable to many, many other paths because in any business, you're going to have to know the basics of accounting. So I actually really like it. I don't mind testing out Uber driver, potentially even on the side. You could be in your main career path. You do Uber driving on the side. It's probably going to teach you quite a lot and more than you expect. Another thing which I like about these type of gigs is if you don't work, right, you're not getting paid. So you kind of are like your own boss. If you don't work, you're not getting paid. That's a muscle. That's a muscle that must be built. And, it relates to a discipline muscle. I've got to go out there and be my own boss, accept these orders and, grind, make the money. So I actually like that one. It's not that easy, like when you're on your own schedule and, you're not hired onto a roster, it's not as easy as everybody thinks. I saw many, many times at Nando's as well, like people saying like, hey, I'm only going to work hard when I am my own boss. So what do you mean? What do you mean by that? You're not going to work hard here at Nando's. You're only going to do it when you're your own boss. But I don't think you can change your habits like that. You got to build yourself up. You got to build your character, create that habit. So then when you do want to go to that next path, and if it is your own boss, then you actually have the ability to back yourself. Right, you've actually got the evidence, right? If you're thinking as an investor and you're going to back a founder of something, wouldn't you rather back a founder which has a track record? So that's kind of how I'm thinking about that one. So Uber driver, yeah, it's quite interesting, Another thing is my personal example. So you want to choose these long-term games, get in all of these hours. I did 4 years. At Nando's, I never really took a day off. It was pretty crazy. I wouldn't recommend it. Like the day that I finally left Nando's, I was on my cheap little scooter and I remember stopping at the stoplights and honestly, I just started crying. I cried because I had put in that much work, pushed myself to the absolute limits. And yeah, I cried on the way home, like with joy and all of these emotions. So what I did was, there's 52 weeks in a year, obviously. I worked every single day for 4 years. That's 208 weeks. I did at least 50 hours a week, right? And, actually in the shop. And remember, proper focused, thinking about how can I improve and all of that. What does that add up to? 10,400 hours within 4 years. And that's honestly, like, that's very conservative. Like, I would also count in there, like, hey, if I'm reading a book about hospitality or whatever, that counts towards your hours as well. So I got my 10,000 hours, right? I got my 10,000 hours in hospitality, learned a lot. And yeah, like how that relates to where I am now. Like after, what I do after hospitality, I really dive deep into the stock market and investing. I don't know the exact amount of hours that I've put in, but I would say it's probably at least 20,000 hours. So that's how it kind of all relates to Headstart Capital, because Headstart Capital is investing in hospitality endeavors. So that's like 30,000 hours behind me, right? So like how many people in those two fields of investing and hospitality, how many people in the world have got 30,000 hours behind them? So now, as an investor, I can look at a hospitality business. I can know the numbers. I can know realistically, all right, I can tweak this to improve all of those numbers, right? And as an investor, I can know, like, what should I actually pay for that investment? What is it actually worth to us? And so that's how it all comes together very, very nicely. I think it also, I forgot to mention as well, like, over time, you want to be thinking, all right, as I stay in this long-term game, you want to be thinking to make the long-term game actually easier for yourself. So that's what, Jeff Bezos says, it's like, at the beginning, you got to do all the dirty work, right? I was doing the dishes and all of that, doing all these really, really boring tasks. But over time, the path you should have it in your mind that it actually becomes easier and easier and more enjoyable over time. And now you're going to enjoy every second of the day. Probably not, right? I probably enjoy 50% of my day. 50% is it's doing tasks that I don't enjoy. But over time, you can delegate more and you can do things in a smarter way. So that's what I'll also be thinking. Like, sometimes you're going to have to increase your workload and it's actually going to get worse for a short period of time. But overall, you want to be trending so you're actually creating more happiness for yourself. Now, that's some of that. I want to pivot a little bit. So you do have to be very careful with advice when you hear it online, even with my advice, because this is just for a general audience, all right? This is a general audience, and you might not even be part of that general audience, right? It might not be targeted for you, so you got to be thinking about that. So I think as well, it's like, if anything is confusing, while this YouTube channel is still very small, you can just send me a message on Instagram. And if you want me to clarify a thing or two, then, just get some questions ready. I'll be happy to do a call with you. Just so you really understand it, because it is quite hard to communicate through a video and have it apply directly to you. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, any advice that you see online, it's just for the general audience, that general demographic. Another thing, the last one for today is do something like a complete opposite, right? A complete opposite of everything we've said so far. Is another way to think about it is maybe you don't want to maximize your income, right? Maybe you don't actually want to, and you actually want to maximize doing something you love. I think that's actually potentially a good strategy. Why? Because if you're really enjoying what you're doing, right, and that also does relate to, you want to play a long-term game. So if you enjoy it, you're probably going to be there longer. But another way to think about it is like have a really, really balanced life. Take it nice and easy. I think nothing wrong with that. And if you're really enjoying it, you're just cruising, you're getting by, everything's all good. You got to make sure you're investing, though. You got to make sure you're investing really well so your assets are compounding for you. You actually don't need to make that much money. And if you invest wisely, you can actually become really wealthy in retirement. So the main thing there is like, sometimes some people, they get themselves in this weird, like, uncanny valley sort of thing where you're pushing yourself too much, but not thinking smart about your path. And then you're working harder, you're getting a little bit more money, but you're burning yourself out. And then to make yourself happy, you rely on retail therapy. So you end up spending more money, So you worked a little bit more to make this much. You know, went from this income to this income, but then you spent all the way back down. So you're actually under that level previously. You got to be very careful about that one. So for a lot of people that are not super driven, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you got to curate how you think and how you play this game according to who you are. And like I was saying in the previous video, be authentic to yourself. Yeah, so that's just part 2. A little bit of clarification there. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much, guys. Please leave a like if you enjoyed these 2 little videos, and I'll see you in the next one.